Well, my name is John Riley. I'm from Noonan, Georgia. I am an avocational guitarist and a luthier. A luthier is a person who builds or repairs or modifies fretted instruments. This is not my full-time job. I'm a pastor of a church there and just enjoy music. When I was in high school, the band room was my home for 5 years. And no, it didn't take me that long to get through. Back in my day, high school started in the 8th grade and went through the 12th. So I'm glad to be here, as the British say, and now for something completely different from the jazz that you heard earlier. I want to introduce you to harp guitars, which were the main guitars in Europe and America from the middle 1850s till about the 1920s or so. But there's a renaissance going on and new ones are being built. This is an example of a new one being built. The body of this one is a product of the imagination of a luthier named Steve Wisniewski, and I did all the stringing and electronics and stuff. So going to start with this one, okay? And going to have some visual blast from the past going on behind me while the music gets started. Well, as you can tell, these things make a lot more and different kinds of noises than your standard guitar does, and that's because you've got on a harp guitar a standard neck of some number of strings, usually 6, although if it's a Russian harp guitar, their main neck is 7, and sometimes there are 12-string main necks, like a 12-string guitar, and it can do kind of the usual things that, that guitars do. How many guitarists do we have out here? Okay, got some guitarists out here. That's good. For a few details for you all that won't mean anything to anybody else. But this one's tuned to open G, which there's a lot of classic rock that is done in open G. That kind of thing, right? Rolling Stones. But in addition to the guitar, you've got one or more sub basses, which basically lets you play bass and guitar at the same time. And in the early 1900s, a fellow that I'll introduce you to later invented something called super trebles, which lets the angels come and visit. So the idea is basically, one person said a harp guitar is like a whole band in a box. Lets you do a lot of different things. And I am not the only harp guitarist in the world. There are relatively few of us, because the harp guitar almost completely died out and went away in the 1920s, right about the time that the electric guitar was being developed. and that was part of the reason why it probably died out. But here's a picture of the largest modern gathering of harp guitarists in the world from last October. The Museum for Making Music in Carlsbad, California, invited us over, and they put on a big exhibit of harp guitars, and actually one of my instruments is in that exhibit. That's why it's not here today, one of the reasons. But that's 51 of us, and that represents about 5 to 10% of all the harp guitarists in the world at this point. Somewhere between 500 and 1,000 of us at this point, in a world of 7.5 billion people. Not that many, but our numbers are growing because new ones are being made. And if you're really interested in a harp guitar, you can actually acquire one without having to try too hard for the first time ever, because there are some production models finally being made once again. There are people who make their living at playing the harp guitar. Stephen Bennett not only looks a lot like Albert Einstein, which is cool, but is a consummate guitar player, and harp guitar is his main instrument. Muriel Anderson is another person. Both these folks you can find on YouTube and other musical resources if you'd like to check them out. And just recently, a Canadian guy named Jamie Dupuis has started posting harp guitar videos to YouTube. His instrumental arrangement, The Sound of Silence, has over 6 million views now. And if you just enter Jamie's name in there, or Jamie Harp Guitar or something like that, you can hear some really cool stuff that Jamie is doing these days. Then there's this guy. His name is Greg Minor, and he is the world expert on the harp guitar, both the history of it and the modern versions, and he is our main networker for all the players and the gatherings that we do. He even contracts with the string companies to custom wind the big strings we need to be able to string and play these instruments again. Also, he has a website called harpguitars.net, and I would encourage you to go there and find out more. Most of the pictures that I'll be showing you come from that website. There's a couple of posts that I've done of the repair of some of these instruments. All these instruments, when I got them, were broken. And it's the only way I could afford them, actually. And bringing them back to life is one of the things that I love to do. Most people, when they think or they hear the term harp guitar, which they've never heard of before, they think of that instrument right there. It's the concert harp. And of course, the harp is one of the most ancient instruments in the world. It goes back to ancient Israel, ancient Egypt, thousands of years back, because it's just a frame with strings. You don't get a whole lot more complex than that. Tuned in a certain order, and then those strings are plucked and played. It's a beautiful instrument, of course, but it's got nothing to do with the harp guitar. This is the instrument that the harp guitar evolved from. It is a medieval Renaissance instrument called the theorbo. If it was just this part right here, it would be called a lute, and I'm sure you've probably heard of lutes. Maybe you've even heard a lute. But the theorbo was developed when the lute players got dissatisfied with the range of notes they could play. And they asked the luthiers, that's where that word comes from, to extend the neck out, sometimes as much as 7 feet, to be able to attach these thick, long bass strings so that they could, we would say today, play the melody and harmony and bass at the same time. So the lute evolved into the modern guitar that we know today, and the theorbo became the harp guitar. There's the beast, that's what I call it, because it is a beast to hold and to play. But as you can see, there's no standard model. They can be anything, any shape, any size, any look that can be imagined, as long as they've got a fretted neck and one or more open, unfretted strings. So that's a harp guitar, and this is a harp guitar, Jetson style, and that's a harp guitar, and that's a harp guitar, and that's a harp guitar, and that's a harp guitar. That is the Picasso, after the artist Picasso, if you know him, and it was made by one of the greatest luthiers, guitar builders of the present age, a woman named Linda Manzer. It was made for the jazz musician Pat Metheny, and you can go on YouTube and find Pat playing that thing, and it's amazing just to see him manage to wrap himself around it and get music out of it. So there's a playable instrument. The first vintage instrument I want to show you today, because see, this one was done in 2016. This one is from somewhere between 1890 and 1912. We're still arguing about its date. The 3 generations of family that owned this said that it was ordered by their great-great-grandfather from the Bruno Instrument Company, which started in 1835 in Macon, Georgia, was ordered in 1890. So that's what they say. Some of our harp guitar experts say it can't possibly be that old. But I tend to kind of go with the family because they were there. At least their ancestors were there when it all came to be. I actually kind of got this in an unusual way because it had been sort of circulating around the harp guitar community for a while, and it had been bought from the original family by this guy, Dan Pease. And Dan loved to bring it to gatherings and show it to people, but it couldn't be played because the sides were cracked and the top was cracked, and if you actually tried to tune it up, it would just collapse in on itself. So this past October, when we gathered, Dan decided to put it up for a raffle to benefit the Harp Guitar Foundation, a nonprofit organization that supports the work we do. And so I decided I wanted to try to win that thing. You know how you win a raffle? Buy lots of tickets. So I bought 200 tickets, and I sat there in a nest of tickets, waiting for the drawing to happen. Do you think I won it? No. And I'm sure there's a lesson in that somewhere. I don't know where. It's not quite gambling, I guess, but anyway, remember the guy that looked like Albert Einstein? His wife Nancy was sitting next to me. She'd bought 10 tickets. She won it. There's Greg and Hiro Takai, a Japanese harp guitarist, handing this instrument to Nancy, and I was all sad, sitting in my nest of now stupid, useless raffle tickets. And I saw her and Stephen whispering together in the corner. They came over to me and laid it in my lap and said, "John, take it home and make it sing again." So that's what I did. It took me about 3 months to strengthen it and fix it up and get it going again. But you all are among some of the first people on the planet to hear it since she got her voice back. And by the way, her name is Hula Lula because apparently sometime in the past she went to Hawaii when there was a Hawaiian music craze in the early 1900s and came back home with a hula girl painted on the back of her. So Hula Lula, and you get to hear her. So let's see if we can see. Bring her up a little bit. Oh, maybe I've got it on mute. I do. Now she's up. So here's the main neck, here's the basses. Sounds pretty good for nearly 130, doesn't it? Yeah, not bad at all. She's been through the ringer. She's been through a lot, heavily modified across the years. But a neat old lady, and I'm glad that she's come to live with me. Moving on to the next one, you can see that it's quite different from Lula. It's a lot bigger, for one thing. This is a baritone harp guitar. And it's got a bit of a story as well, because it's kind of a mystery. It's got a relationship somehow to the guitar and the luthier on the left there, You can see kind of a family resemblance between the two. The one on the right is this instrument before it was restored. And we know the one on the left was made by a guy named Joseph Bowman, who was active in the 1890s and on from there. However, if you look in the sound hole here, and here's what it looks like in the sound hole, you see a name stamp there, FW Walton. And this instrument is very well crafted, very well made with a lot of fine detail and inlays and so on. But this is the only instrument on the planet that we know of with that maker's mark in it. And you know how you can look up anything and anybody on the internet today? If you were to enter my name in, I'd pop up. You can find out more about me than I want you to know, probably. But you put FW Walton in, 0. You'll get a link to my Facebook page where I talked about restoring this thing, and a link to Greg Miner's website because he's got a little article on it, and that's it. A guy who's completely not there, and yet he must have made, or she must have made, all we got is initials, some incredible instruments, because this is an incredible instrument. It came to me with the back falling off in 5 pieces, and the top caving in and missing about 15% of its inlays, and it was a labor of love to get it back together, but eventually it happened. And this, being a baritone guitar, has a lower voice. It's tuned a full step lower than a standard guitar. It's a 29-inch string length instead of the 25-inch that's standard with most guitars. And so it's got a deep voice to go with all that. Nice low basses and a lower thing. But that works real well with my voice, because I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not a soprano. Now, I don't know how you guys got into music. I got into music because I found out it was something I could do. I got into guitars when my father gave me a guitar for Christmas when I was 7 years old. So I've been playing for, way too long now, 50 some odd years. But I wanted to do other things. Like when I was a kid in the early 60s, about the only thing there was to do was play baseball in my neighborhood. We had a basketball hoop, but no basketball. And, throwing rocks through the basketball hoop just doesn't get it. But somebody had a bat, somebody had a ball, and there were enough gloves among the kids in the neighborhood that the outfield could always have a glove. And so we'd play baseball. And I loved baseball. I lived in New York at the time. The New York Yankees, still fantastic as far as I'm concerned. But there's only one problem. I stunk at baseball. I think that's one of the reasons I ended up in music, because I can do music, but I couldn't do baseball. You guys are probably all multiple threats, fantastic athletes and fantastic musicians too. But is there anybody in here who, remember recess back in elementary school? Was anybody here who, like me, when they sent you out to recess to play a game and they divided you into 2 teams and they picked, I was the last one picked. Oh, my brothers, my sisters, I'm home. This song is for me and this song is for you. It's called Right Field. Saturday summers when I was a kid, we'd head for the ball field. Here's what we did. We'd pick out the captain, choose up the teams. It was always a matter for my self-esteem that the biggest and strongest got shortstop and first. The last ones they picked were the worst. I didn't ask, it was already sealed. I just took up my place in right field. 'Cause here in right field, it's easy, you can be awkward and you can be slow. That's why I'm here in right field, watching the dandelions grow. Well, out here in right field, it's lonely and dull. Little leagues never have lefties who pull. I pray for the day they hit one my way. They never did, but still I would pray that I make a fantastic catch on the run. And not lose the ball in the sun. Then I'd awake from that grand reverie and pray that they never would hit one to me. 'Cause here in right field, it's easy, you know. You can be awkward and you can be slow. That's why I'm here in right field, watching the dandelions grow. Well, out in the distance, the game's dragging on. There's strikes on the batter, 2 runners are on. I don't know the inning, I've forgotten the score. The whole team is yelling, and I don't know what for. Then suddenly everyone's pointing at me. My mind has been wandering, what could it be? They point to the sky, and I look up above, and a baseball drops into my glove. 'Cause here in right field, it isn't easy, you know. You gotta know how to catch, you gotta know how to throw. That's why I'm here in right field, watching the dandelions grow. Well, the next one, all these, by the way, are American harp guitars. A lot of the ones you saw in the pictures when the first instrument was playing were European, Italian, German, French, and so on. But all these are American harp guitars. When the great immigration of the late 1800s happened, a lot of luthiers came across with the Italian and the Swedish and the other people who immigrated here, and they began building harp guitars. And this one right here, the next one, this is the iconic American harp guitar. This is a Gibson Style U from 1914, so it's 104 years old. And rock stars, when they make their millions and start building their guitar collection, they want one of these. Anybody recognize this guy? Not Slash. Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin. And then there's this guy right here. If you know your modern jazz and rock, Joe Bonamassa is his name. Fantastic, fantastic guitarist. He had to have one of these. And then this guy was the guy that I first saw play a harp guitar. His name is Robbie Robertson. He was the lead guitarist for a group called The Band, who wrote The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down and The Wait, and just fantastic songs. And at the end of a movie about their last concert called The Last Waltz, he comes out with this instrument. I'm sitting in a movie theater in about 1974, and my jaw hits the floor and says, oh, if I could just be in the same room with one of those. And didn't know it, but it started my passion for these instruments. This is an amazing instrument, beautifully built. And then there's this guy, right? He'll be back in the next guitar as well. His name is Michael Hedges. He was a genius at the acoustic guitar. And you'll hear more about him in a minute, but when he started making his money, you can see that Gibson harp guitar behind him there, along with 2 others. But this instrument is beautiful to look at, beautifully made and beautifully crafted. It weighs a ton. Those of you who are acoustic guitarists, this thing weighs 18 pounds. And Mr. Gibson, the guy in the middle of the funny-looking instrument there, built it that heavy because he was afraid that all of the tension and pressure from the strings would just cause it to cave in on itself. His real idea, his big idea, what he wanted to do with this instrument and all his other instruments, was to help create what's called a mandolin orchestra. So we had mandolins, a slightly larger one called a mandola, a larger one yet called the mandocello, and then there's this bug-eyed monster over in the corner here called a mando bass, and then right next to the mando bass is the harp guitar. And Gibson's idea was the harp guitar would be sort of the musical glue of the group. It would help fill in the corners, if you will, and to be part of an ensemble. It was always considered by Gibson to be a backup instrument. But to the people who played it in that first set of pictures that went by, you saw a lot of people playing these things, or holding these things. People who played them did everything. They did blues, they did jazz, they did old, early country. They just did anything and everything. And there's very few of these, even as iconic as they are. There are only about 350 made. Maybe 100 of them are still in existence. Maybe 50 of them are still playable. So very few people have heard this instrument as famous as it is. So you get to hear it, but I want you to sort of listen to the way it sounds, because we're going to compare it to the very next one. And it's a big difference. Little tuning. Did my best to do all this before you got here. Okay. Well, the sun is surely sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. So this old world must still be spinning around, and I still love you. So close your eyes, you can close your eyes, it's all right. I don't know no love song, but I can't sing the blues anymore. But I can sing this song. You can sing this song when I'm gone. It won't be long before another day that we're gonna have a good time. Nobody's gonna take that time away. We can stay as long as we like. So close your eyes, you can close your eyes, it's all right. I don't know no love song, but I can't sing the blues anymore. But I can sing this song. You can sing this song when I'm gone. That's what the Gibson sounds like. And did you notice, as huge, as massive as it is, it sounds kind of thin, doesn't it? And that's because the top is 1/4 of an inch thick, hugely thick, 3 times as thick as a modern acoustic guitar. And the back is equally thick. It's built like a tank. And so it resonates about like a tank, too. It's beautiful to look at, but difficult to play, and you just can't get the kind of sound out of it that you'd love to get. Well, the next one here was made the same year, 1914, but made by geniuses and designed by a genius. This is a 1914 Dyer harp guitar, and it is the ultimate harp guitar in many ways. As a matter of fact, the new harp guitars that are being made are either direct copies of this or deeply, deeply inspired by this. Michael Hedges, that you saw a picture of a minute ago, he basically used a model just like this that he found in a pawn shop in Texas in the late 70s to reintroduce the harp guitar to America and the world. He took that instrument and incorporated it into his musical act, and people looked at that and said, "What is that?" and we're fascinated by it. And almost every harp guitarist that's active today looks back to Michael Hedges and says, that's who inspired me to play. He died very unfortunately in a car accident, but you can still see his music, and if you are a guitar person especially, he was a virtuoso. You need to look up Michael Hedges, not only for his harp guitar music, but for his guitar music in general. Amazing, amazing player. The W.J. Dyer Company commissioned this instrument in the early 1900s. All of them were built by these two men, the Larson brothers, who are legendary luthiers. They made about 2,500 fretted instruments of all kinds in a 40-year career in a two-man shop. And the design was by this guy right here on the left, whose name was Knudsen, Christopher Knudsen. And if you notice, if you look real closely, you can see that this is the guy who invented the super trebles too, because there's super trebles on that left-handed guitar that he's holding. He didn't have the capacity to build these things, but he designed and invented them. And between his design and the Larson brothers' improvements, well, just listen to it. Still got in your mind the sound of the Gibson, right? Same year, same age. Had to do about the same amount of repair work on both of them to get them going again. So you've got the Gibson in your ear. Here is the Dyer. You hear the difference? Can we bring it up a little bit more? It just rings and rings and rings. And when I play it, it's vibrating against my chest. It's a physical experience to play this thing. It's just amazing. Big difference, and if you are interested in buying a harp guitar, both the Timberline Company and some friends of mine who go by the brand name of Tone Devil are making basically this instrument again. And you can order one through a guitar company like Guitar Center, a Musician's Friend, or something like that, or you can go directly to those companies and get them. All you need is between $1,000 and $2,500, and it can be yours. Save your pennies. However, if you'd like to go with a less expensive starting point, you can go back to my friend Steve Wisniewski. Steve is a guy in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who has been building instruments for decades now. And this is either his first or his second harp guitar that he built somewhere around the year 2000 or 2001. This is Steve right here. He's just an old hippie like me. And he is world famous for his fretless basses, electric basses that he builds. But he does build all kinds of fretted instruments as well. And they're built in a style that is all his own. And some people might say that they're not as fine as some others would be. I've got a couple of friends who, if they build you a harp guitar, you will not spend less than $15,000 or $20,000 for that instrument. So there are people who are on that end of the scale too. But I like Steve's stuff, because this one is loud and proud and out there. Did I wake anybody up? And for those of you guitarists out there, this one is tuned at double dot D on the main neck, and it's got 2 octaves of D's after that. This is a D key monster. And I also like to do a little looping with this one, so let me try that, see if it works. So far, so good. I got trouble all of my days. I bid farewell to old Kentucky, the place where I was born and raised. For 6 long years I've been in trouble. No pleasures here on earth I find. For in this world I'm bound to ramble, have no friends to help me now. Oh, it's farewell, my dear loved one, my face you'll never see no more. For I'm bound to ride that northern railway, perhaps I'll die upon that train. Then you can carry me in some deep valley where many years I may dwell. Then you may learn to love another while I am sleeping in my grave. Oh, it's farewell, my dear loved one, my face you'll never see no more. But there's one promise I've been given, I'll meet you on God's golden shore. I'll meet you on God's golden shore. Well, that's the harp guitar, and I've got 5 minutes left, so my plan worked. And so I want to see if any of you all have any questions that I might be able to answer for you. Yes, sir. Well, let's do a couple of questions, and maybe if I get special permission, I can do one more song. Yes?
Do they make harp ukuleles?
Yes, they do make harp ukuleles. As a matter of fact, Tone Devil makes them, and a couple of other luthiers make them. Go to harpguitars.net, and you can find them. Okay, someone else? Yes, ma'am. That's like asking which of my children is my favorite, and one of my kids is here. videotaping this thing, so I've got to be real careful. It's hard to say because, you know, I've got blood, sweat, and tears in all of them. They came to me without a voice. And the journey to bring their voice back, to hear them for the first time in decades perhaps, just makes them all very, very special. I just am in love with these instruments and I want to spend all my time with them. Yes?
Has anyone ever told you that you're like the Harp Guitar Bob Ross?
I don't think my hair is quite poofy enough. Yes, sir?
Have you ever considered recording your music?
Not a whole lot because my passion is more in sharing it. A lot of my friends, the harp guitar community is a very small community, and so I'm privileged to call a lot of these people that you've seen up there today. And let me just, as we're doing the questions, I'll show, well, I guess we're done. All these people, they're doing recording. They're doing amazing things, and they do it much better than I can. But I can go, I'm the only person in the United States I know that's going into schools and sharing these instruments and trying to get folks interested in them. So that's my task right now. Someone else? Yes, back there.
Is there a Harp electric guitar?
Oh, yes. Yes. Steve Klein, one of the great luthiers, again, of the current age, he designed an electric harp guitar for Michael Hedges before he died. And just in the last year or so has begun producing it again. I actually saw one and held one at the gathering in California a few months ago. Some amazing electric instruments out there. So yes, they are. Someone else? Anybody else with a question?
Is there a standard tuning for the harp side of the guitar?
No, and that's why all my friends say that I'm insane to do this, play one after the other, because every one of them has a different set of tunings on the sub basses, and they're also on the main neck. Only a couple of them are in standing tuning. So one of them's an open G, one of them's dad-gad. So it's all over the place in terms of the tuning, and I've got to remember which guitar I'm on and which string to hit. And that's my excuse for why I sometimes hit a wrong note, and I'm sticking with it. Someone else? Yes?
How many harp guitars do you own?
Total of 9 right now. One is in the museum collection and it's coming back to me next month. One, a really neat one, actually the one in the middle right there, which is a beautiful instrument, began caving in. Just from the pressure of the strings, I have to put it back on the repair table and go in and try to get it back to where it's playable again. And then the other one I didn't bring because there wasn't time. You know, just barely had time to squeak in 6. But right now I have 9 and about 30 other fretted instruments. So yes, I do have a problem, but my wife is working with me on it. Anybody else? Yes, back there.
Do they have them in sizes?
Yes, well, if you have time and come up to like this one, this is what's called a parlor size, and sometimes called a 3/4 or a student size. And smaller people, who are powerful people, by the way, can play this. And Muriel Anderson, the lady who's probably the top female player in the world today of a harp guitar, she's 5 feet tall. So, what's that? Yeah, she's tiny. She's like a little bundle of dynamite. She's amazing. Well, let's see what time is it. 12:32. You want to hear one more song?
Yes.
Okay. You want to hear the Fathead again? Okay. All right. Most of the music that I've played today has been what's called Americana music, uniquely and distinctly American music. And I always try to give a shout out to the pioneers and in many cases, the originators of all uniquely American music, whether it's blues or jazz or gospel or rock and roll or whatever it may be. African American musicians are at the base of all of that. They are almost always, if not the pioneers, among the first pioneers of all the styles of music. And I always try to give that credit where credit is due because it's not shared enough. So thank you to all those who've come before and given us the music that they have. This is an old Neil Young song called Don't Let It Bring You Down. sitting by the side of the road with the lorries floating by. A blue moon sinking from the weight of the load, and the buildings scrape the sky. Cold wind ripping down the alley at dawn, and the morning paper flies. A dead man lying by the side of the road with the daylight in his eyes. Don't let it bring you down, it's only castles burning. Find someone who's turning, and you will come around. Blind man running through the light of the night with an answer in his hand. Come on down to the river of sight and you can really understand. Red light flashing in the window in the rain, can you hear the sirens moan? A white cane lying in a gutter in a lane. If you're walking home alone, don't let it bring you down, it's only castles burning. Find someone who's turning, or you will come around. Don't let it bring you down, it's only castles burning. Just find someone who's turning, and you will come around.